Today we're going to be looking at lesson 10.1, which is titled Lines, Rays, and Angles. And it starts in your big Go Math book on page 381, and it runs through page 384. Typically in the classroom, before we start a new skill, we unpack the problem in our math journal, and we talk about some of the key vocabulary terms. So with this skill, the learning target is to identify points, lines, line segments, rays, angles, including right angles, acute angles, and obtuse angles. And then later on in another lesson, we're going to be looking at perpendicular lines and parallel lines. So, several really key important geometry vocabulary terms that is going to be really important for you to understand. And when we talk about them, it's really important that you're able to kind of picture and visualize what it is I'm talking about. So down the line, when we're talking angles, and I say to create an angle, you have to put two rays together at a corner, that you can visualize and picture what a ray is. So really make sure you're paying attention to these geometry vocabulary terms. You can even maybe make up flashcards and maybe on one side draw a picture, on the back side do the definition, and just kind of practice that way. You can better memorize and better understand some of these really, really, really super important foundational geometry vocabulary terms. Let's go ahead and look on page 381. This is going to really review some key important vocabulary terms. It says up here at the top for the unlock the problem, it's going to say everyday things can model geometric figures. For example, the period at the end of the sentence models a point. And then it goes on to say a solid painted stripe in the middle of the road models a line. Let's look at our first definition right here, which is a point. A point is an exact location in space. And I really like these columns because it gives you a picture of how you would write it, or how it would be drawn maybe in a model, how you would read it and write it out, and then an example. So this little tip of the pencil here, if you were to put that on paper, it would create a point. Our next vocabulary term we have is a line, which is a straight path of points that continues without end in both directions. And to draw a point on paper, you would draw the line with two arrows on both ends. So the arrows are really important. And you would label it line BC, or you could read it as line CB. You could go the opposite way. And this is how you would write it. I would really pay attention as well to the lines up above BC and CB. So you can't just put BC and assume that people will know what you're talking about. You have to put the line picture up above it, like a little mini one that fits above the letters or the points you're talking about. Our next vocabulary term is going to be a line segment, which is part of a line between two endpoints. So that's why they call it a line segment or a line section. So it's a piece of a bigger line. And you can see how a line segment would be drawn differently. So in this instance, you have a line segment DE, and you know it's a segment because it has the two endpoints on the end instead of arrows. So those endpoints indicate it is a piece of, or a section, or a segment of a larger line that you want to just focus in on this piece. You can see how it is written differently as well when you write it out. Up above your points, the DE or the ED in this instance, you would have just the line, in this case, without any arrows. So that's how when you write it, it separates it from people thinking it's a line that you're talking about. And lastly, our important vocabulary term we have is array. An array is part of a line that has one endpoint and continues without end in one direction. And you can see here a nice model of what array would look like. So you have ray, FG. And in this instance, the ray can only be written one way. So you would start with the endpoint, and then on the other end, you would have, so this would be FG, that you wouldn't read it as GF. So you always start with the endpoint, and then the arrow goes as the second letter. And you can see here as well how you would indicate FG as a ray as opposed to a line segment or a line. So this section right here is really important because in questions and on tests or quizzes, whatever, it's going to have you, it's going to ask the question, oh, well, highlight or indicate line segment DE, and you're going to have to be able to find that section of the greater line, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. I do want to look at as well this section down here, the activity draw and label, JK. So now think to yourself, with the what's up above JK, is that a line segment, or array? So take like 5 seconds, think to yourself, what is that geometric figure indicating? Now, if you thought it was a line segment, you would be correct. Ding, 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 ding. So we're going to go ahead and draw and label line segment JK. So you could draw it this way. Do this color. So you can draw it this way. And you could say JK. I believe tomorrow on your workbook pages, you will have several questions where you have to draw a line or draw a line segment, draw a ray. So I think the first half would be questions just like this. Now, lines, line segments, rays don't always go left to right. So you could also draw them this way. So this might be J and this might be K. So they could go vertical, diagonal, left to right. Lots of different ways you could do that. And then lastly, is there any other way to name line segment JK? I think there is. Think to yourself, could we rewrite it and name it a different way? 5 seconds. If you think yes, you are correct. So yes, I could write it as line segment KJ. Nice complete sentence. Easy enough. So again, for lines and line segments, you can flip-flop the points. So you could do JK or in this instance, KJ. Our last thing I wanted to touch on is going to be the math talk. I thought this was a really good question. It says, explain how lines and line segments and rays are related. And what I thought to myself here was that rays and line segments are parts of the greater line. So I might, off to the side, or if we were in class, we would kind of talk about this out loud. You could say a ray is part of a line. A line segment can be part of a line or part of a ray. So again, you can you have the big line, and rays and line segments relate to the big line because line segments can be a part of or focus in on a particular section of a line. And a line segment can also focus on part of the line or ray as well. So just as an example, if I were to draw this line, let's say it's line A, B, right? I could have a segment within that line. I can focus on a different section. Maybe I have a point here, which is C, and maybe I focus in on this ray, this ray, which is CA. Maybe there's a question on ray CA. Okay, so that's how they're all sort of connected to each other. We'll go ahead and turn to page 382. The topic on this page is angles. Go ahead and look at the definition. It says an angle is formed by two rays or line segments that have the same endpoint. So same endpoint means they need to be connected like this right here. The shared endpoint is called the vertex. So this right here, this little corner would be the vertex of this particular angle. You could read that angle in a few different ways. You could read it as angle PQR, so PQR. You could also read it as RQP, so angle RQP. Or lastly, I might just say, well, look at angle Q, and you would need to know or be able to picture that angle Q would be this sort of area right in here. So how big is this angle, angle Q? You would write it. See, this is really important. Just like with lines, line segments, rays, you have a little geometric figure that goes along with the points. This would be the little geometric figure here. Oh, my dog just jumped up. Okay, so you have angle PQR, angle RQP, or angle Q. And then you can kind of see this angle almost matches the same angle of our pizza slice. And I saw a lot of you guys on last week's assignments use a slice of pizza as one of your examples of like in the real world, where can you find angles? This is a really important, let's move down a little bit further. This is a really important point to make. You can name an angle by the vertex. And when you name an angle using 3 points, the vertex is always the point in the middle. And what that means is, look right up here, you have the vertex where the two line segments or rays meet. You have this vertex point of Q always in the middle. So when you're using the 3 points, your vertex will always be the middle point. So PQR or RQP. So that's really important. So, sometimes we get a little confused and we might say, for example, angle RPQ. Well, based on this picture, there is no angle there is no angle for angle RPQ. So you can't go this way. You can only go where the vertex is in the middle, if that makes sense. In regard to angles, there are 4 types. A lot of us think there's 3, but there's actually 4. You are familiar probably with 3 of them already. Right angle you touched on last year. So a right angle forms a square corner, kind of like if you were to put like a little post-it right in there. The post-it would fit where there's not any extra hanging over here or over here. So a right angle, can anyone think of how many degrees a right angle is? Yes, yes, yes. A right angle would be 90 degrees. We also have a straight angle. This is the one we probably just don't normally think of. We have a straight angle forms a line. So let me give you a visual here of a straight angle, right? So this angle right here would measure, a straight line measures how many degrees? We talked about that this year. It's going to measure 180 degrees. An acute angle, last year, I think you talked about an acute angle being, I think you called it an angle that's less than 90 degrees. So an acute angle is less than a right angle. So this one could actually, it's not just one particular degree measure. This one would measure anywhere from 1 degree all the way through to 89 degrees. So it could be a 45-degree angle, a 37-degree, a 62-degree. So there's lots of different acute angle measurements. We just need to remember that an acute angle is anything less than 90 degrees. Lastly, you have an obtuse angle, which is an angle that is greater than a right angle and less than a straight line. So, or less than a straight angle. So it is greater. So it would be kind of like in this range right here. I'm sorry. Yeah, so it's anything greater than 90 and less than 180. So that one, I guess you could say it would range from 91 degrees all the way to 179 degrees. Any sort of angles that measure in this degree range would be called an obtuse angle. So really important angle measures. You will see these in nearly every grade level that you move on through. So certainly through 5th grade through middle school. And in life in general, these are probably just good sort of foundational skills to also know. So right angle, straight angle, acute, and obtuse, really important foundational vocabulary for geometry. Let's go ahead and look at page 383, the share and show. We're going to quickly go through the top section, and I really want to focus in our efforts on the on your own. So when we look at the share and show piece, it says draw and label line segment AB in the space at the right. So AB is like I just said, it is a line segment. And it would look sort of something like this. So line segment AB. Number 2, draw and label an example of the figure. This is a lot like your homework tomorrow or your workbook page tomorrow. So if you get stuck tomorrow, come back and rewatch this section of the video so you have a better understanding. It says draw and label an example of each figure. So we have line X, Y. So my line, I got to make sure I have the arrows on both ends. So it might be X, Y. You can choose whatever direction you want yours to go in. Sorry, this should be a Y here. Looks kind of like an X, sorry. Number 3, an obtuse angle, K. So I want my angle to be something like this. And in here, this point would need to be K. We also have a right angle for CDE. So I'm just going to the best of my ability, make sure it doesn't look, get as close to a right angle or 90 degrees as I can. And so this would be maybe CD has to go in the middle, CDE. And for 5 through, use figure M for 5 and 6, got it. It says name a line segment. So I'm going to just pick this right here, this section, as my line segment. So I will write that as line segment TV and name a right angle. While there really is only one right angle in that shape, you can kind of see it. It has the square corner there. You have that little sort of blue highlighted area. And so I want to, since I'm naming an angle, I want to put the angle symbol. U has to go in the middle of my angle. So I'm going to say WUT is what I'm going to go with. So WUT, but you might have done TUW, and that's fine as well. That would work as well. Let's go ahead and look at the on your own. And it says draw and label an example of each figure. So I want you to go ahead and try 7, 8, and 9 on your own. So I'm gonna why don't you go ahead and pause the video and try 7, 8, and 9 on your own, and then click play again when you have your 3 figures. So go ahead and pause now, answer 7, 8, and 9 on your own, and then check it against what I draw. Okay, here's my example for number 7. So again, you should have already paused, answered 7, 8, and 9, and you're going to check it with what I draw. So for Ray PQ, so it has to go in that direction, and I would put P and then Q. Just make sure you put like little endpoints. So Ray PQ. An acute angle for RST. So I just need this angle to be less than 90. So it's going to just look like something like that. And it's going to be R, S. S is the corner. It's the vertex of the two rays coming together. And T. That. And then my straight angle means straight line of W, X, and Z. So I'm just going to say W, X, and Z. So W, X, Z. So straight angle is a straight line. Why don't you guys go ahead? Let's do we'll use figure F. We'll do 10 through 15 together because we haven't really seen a shape like that before. I want to say maybe you've seen something like this maybe once or twice, and it was like street names. So like line AC was First Street, and line KJ was Second Street or Elm Street, something like that. So some of us may have seen something like this on an extended activity. So we might be a little bit familiar. So starting with number 10, it's going to ask us to name a ray. So I'm going to highlight, and there are lots of rays here, so you can kind of pick a different one if you wanted. But this ray right here jumps out to me. So I would label that or name it as ray B A. So remember, my starting endpoint should be the one without the arrow. And then so B is without the arrow, and A is going in the other. It has the arrow on it, so it should be my second letter. Number 11 says name an obtuse angle. So it has to be greater than 90. So look, I'm going to, let me do this so we don't get confused on anything. So for my obtuse angle, I want to try, what jumps out at me here is RB, is that a J? RBJ. So I want to put angle R, B, and then J. Or it could be JBR, whichever way you're looking at it. Let's take a look. Let me clear this. I'm going to clear it each time so we don't get mixed up. So number 12 says name a line, and I've named a couple already. So can you pause and maybe name a line? So pause me and see if you can answer 12 and 13 on your own. See what you come up with there. So go ahead, click pause and answer 12 and 13. So for number 12, I'm going to go ahead and pick, easiest one I see is this guy right here. Make my life easy. Work smarter, not harder, right? So name a line. You want to make sure you have the arrows up at the top. A, C, that would work. And a line segment, which I am going to choose for my line segment. I'm going to do this one right here. I think this is a good one. BR. So I'm going to do line segment BR and see how I don't have the arrows on top of the line above BR. Lastly, we're going to name a right angle and name an acute angle. So I'm just erasing. So I want to have my angle symbol for both of those. Now the right angle that I have noticed would be the only one that's there is this guy. Here's my right angle. And so that would be angle PRC or CRP, however you write that. Just make sure the R is in the middle. And then for my acute angle, I think lots of options here. How about this guy? KBR. Let's label that down there. So angle KBR. That looks good. Why don't we go ahead and flip over to our last page, which is 384. Okay, on page 384, number 16, let me go ahead and zoom in here. We are asked to take a look at that bridge picture. Move this over. And to answer questions 16 and 17. So it says classify angle A. Classify meaning, is it a right angle, a straight angle, acute, obtuse? So I'm going to find angle A in my picture, and it looks like it is right here. Can you see me highlighting that? So angle A appears to me to be, I think to yourself, is it right, acute, straight? Obviously not straight, right? Or obtuse? Take 5 seconds. Yeah, I think angle A, I would classify it as a right angle. Correct. Good job. It says which angle for number 17 appears to be obtuse. So you have angle A, which we know is right. And then we have angle C and B. Well, I'm going to think to myself, well, what is an obtuse angle? Okay, Miss Howell said an obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees. So it has to be a bigger or wider angle. And when I compare C to B, it looks like, and I might have to turn my book a little bit to see angle C a little bit better because right now it looks upside down. So you might have to maneuver or turn your book to get a better picture of it. But I think angle C is going to be the correct option here. It's going to be the obtuse angle. We're going to skip 18. There's lots and lots, probably close to 10 different angles there. You can label them different ways. So you could, lots of different options there, but we'll skip that for time purposes. I do really love number 19. I love like the what's the error questions. It says Vanessa drew an angle at the right and named it TRS. Explain why Vanessa's name for the angle is incorrect. And so we're looking at this angle right here. And when you put your finger over it or your pencil over it, you don't go TRS. You don't go that way. So naturally you're going to go RST. And so the explanation behind that is going back to that first page with the vocabulary. that in order to write an angle, you have to have the vertex or the corner in the middle. So our explanation, it's going to be a couple different ways. You could say angle RST or TSR, and the explanation is the vertex or corner should be in the middle of the endpoints. And lastly, our test prep question. You know how I love a test prep, right? It says, which of the following terms best describes the figure at the right? So go ahead, pause the video, make your selection A, B, C, or D. So which term best describes the figure at the right? Pause it, answer it, and come back. Okay, to me, that looks like, so you have one endpoint and an arrow going the opposite direction. So yes, thinking back to our vocabulary, it should be, the correct answer would be array. Correct, you guys. Nice job. Hope this is a really good introduction to the workbook pages tomorrow. You can always come back and watch this video. So if you are getting stumped tomorrow, please, 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 please come back, watch the video again, look at the definitions in your book, and I feel really confident that you'll be able to answer the questions correctly in the workbook pages, okay? Or always send me a private message if you have a question, and I look forward to presenting a new lesson on Wednesday for you. Thanks, guys.